That evening had the kind of warmth I usually crave after a long week. The low hum of jazz, the flicker of candles, and the smell of rosemary drifting from the oven. Mark was cooking, which was already unusual. He poured me wine, pulled out my chair, and complimented everything from my hair to my laugh. I should have felt lucky. Instead, something in me tightened. His sweetness wasn't natural, it was polished, practiced, like a salesman pitching love instead of a product. He served dinner with a proud little grin, the salmon plated like something out of a cooking show. "You've been working too hard, Liv," he said gently. "You need a break." I laughed, taking a sip of wine. A break? From life? That would be nice. He didn't laugh back, just watched me. Eyes soft, voice steady. "I mean it. You should go to the coast this weekend. Alone. Just relax." My fork paused midair. Since when did Mark want me anywhere without him? He leaned closer, hand brushing mine. "You deserve peace," he said. "No deadlines, no alarms, just you." I wanted to believe him. God knows I was tired enough to want the escape, but his sudden generosity felt too deliberate. He smiled again, that same charming, careful smile, and something in my gut whispered that this wasn't about me needing rest. It was about him needing space, and I couldn't help wondering, for what? I tried to shake off the unease, forcing myself to enjoy the evening. The food really was perfect. Tender fish, crisp wine, every detail thought through. Mark was charming, attentive, even playful, the kind of man he used to be when we first met. "You've been holding everything together," he said softly. "Let me do something for you." I smiled, but inside I felt that quiet prickle of confusion. When did he start noticing what I needed? I leaned back in my chair, pretending to relax, while my mind started stitching pieces together. The sudden compliments. The new cologne. The way he'd been humming lately, lighter somehow, as if carrying a secret that kept him afloat. "You're full of surprises tonight," I teased. He chuckled, pouring me another glass of wine, careful not to meet my eyes. It was a small thing, but I saw it. The flicker of guilt, gone as quickly as it came. Still, I let the moment play out. Maybe he was just trying to be kind. Maybe I was overthinking again, like he always said. But when he reached across the table and said, "Promise me you'll think about it. The weekend. Just for you." Something inside me hesitated. I smiled back, nodding as if he'd convinced me. Yet beneath that calm surface, a thought quietly took root. If he's so eager to send me away, what exactly does he plan to do once I'm gone? I spent the rest of the evening trying to read him. The way his eyes lingered, the way he laughed a little too quickly at his own jokes. He poured another glass of wine and clinked it against mine. "To you," he said, "and to some well-deserved rest." The toast felt innocent enough, but there was something in his voice, a low, eager note I couldn't name. I smiled anyway, pretending not to notice the unease curling in my chest like smoke. Later, as we cleared the dishes, he wrapped his arms around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. "You'll come back refreshed," he whispered, lips brushing my neck. I nodded, smiling through the warmth of the moment, though a small chill ran down my spine. That wasn't tenderness, that was relief. It was as if he was already living in the empty space I'd leave behind. When we went to bed, I lay awake beside him, counting the beats of his breathing. Everything about him looked the same, the man I loved, the husband I trusted, but my instincts wouldn't quiet. Something was off. He wanted me gone, and I didn't yet know why. Still, as I stared at the ceiling in the dark, one thought began to take shape. If he thinks this weekend will be his, he's in for a surprise. Friday morning arrived with that strange blend of calm and tension, like the air before a storm. I packed my suitcase slowly, folding each shirt as if I were buying time to change my mind. Mark hovered in the doorway, watching me with that perfect mix of affection and detachment. "Promise me you'll relax," he said, taking the handle of my bag as if to help. No calls, no work, no stress. I smiled faintly, slipping into the role of the grateful wife. I'll try, I said. Just don't burn the house down while I'm gone. He laughed, that easy, charming sound I used to love, but this time it felt hollow. He pulled me close for a long hug, the kind that should have comforted me, but instead left me uneasy. His hands lingered on my back as if memorizing the shape of my absence. When he kissed me goodbye, I caught a faint whiff of unfamiliar perfume on his shirt, not mine. I almost said something but swallowed it. If this was the game he wanted to play, I needed to learn the rules first. As I drove away, the city lights stretched behind me, blurring through the windshield. My chest tightened with something between fear and clarity. I wasn't going to the coast. Not yet. I turned at the next intersection, heading across town to Rachel's apartment. Mark thought he'd just earned himself a weekend of freedom. What he didn't know was that I'd just given myself one too, the freedom to find the truth. Rachel's apartment felt like the safest place in the world. Warm, cluttered, full of half-burned candles and the smell of coffee. She opened the door in her robe, blinking in surprise. "You're supposed to be on a beach by now," she said. I smiled faintly, setting down my suitcase. Change of plans. I didn't need to say more. Rachel had seen me through worse. She recognized that tone in my voice, the one that said something wasn't right. I spent the evening pretending I was away, my phone lighting up with Mark's predictable check-ins. "Just checked in. Beautiful view," I texted. A few seconds later, his reply appeared. "Glad to hear that. Miss you already." I stared at the screen longer than I should have, trying to decipher whether his words carried guilt or comfort. They felt like placeholders, messages meant for peace of mind, not love. Something about how easily he lied told me I was right to trust my instincts. Rachel tried to lighten the mood, turning on a movie and pouring wine, but my mind kept replaying the way he smiled that morning. That forced ease, that nervous energy disguised as affection. I knew something would happen that weekend. I didn't know when or how, but I could feel it pulling closer, like a storm just beyond the horizon. And when it hit, I intended to be ready. That night, as Rachel slept, I sat by her window watching the city lights flicker like distant secrets. The wine sat untouched beside me. I needed a clear head. Every sound from the street made my pulse quicken. A car door slamming, laughter echoing through the night. Somewhere across town, my husband was living a story I wasn't supposed to see. The thought both burned and steadied me. If he wanted freedom, I'd give it to him. Just not the kind he expected. I opened my laptop, my fingers trembling slightly as I logged into the security app. A quiet thrill ran through me, the kind that comes before the truth finally shows its face. The small cameras I'd hidden in our home had been silent witnesses for weeks, ever since I'd found that faint trace of perfume on his collar. He had laughed then, called me paranoid, said it was just air freshener. But air freshener doesn't whisper someone else's name in your bed. I watched the screen flicker to life, the timestamp in the corner ticking steadily. For now, the house was still. Too still. I closed the laptop, heart pounding with both fear and focus. Tomorrow, I'd know. Tomorrow, his lies would stop being shadows. As I finally lay down to sleep beside my suitcase, I felt strangely calm, like a woman standing on the edge of a truth she's ready to face. Morning light crept through Rachel's curtains, thin and pale, but I was already awake. My laptop sat open on the coffee table, the feed from my living room glowing faintly against the quiet. Rachel stirred on the couch beside me, rubbing her eyes. "Liv, what are you doing up so early?" she mumbled. I didn't look away from the screen. "Checking if my husband's being the man he swore he was." My voice was steady, almost cold, a tone I didn't recognize as my own. Rachel blinked, sitting up, her messy hair falling over one eye. "You're not serious," she said, her tone half amusement, half worry. "You didn't actually put cameras in the house." I gave a small nod. "A month ago," I said. "After I found perfume on his shirt. He said it was air freshener." My lips tightened as I said the words, remembering his laughter. How easily he'd dismissed my doubt. "I just wanted proof I wasn't crazy," I added softly, fingers tightening around the mug of coffee I hadn't touched. Rachel leaned closer to the laptop, curiosity turning to disbelief. "Oh my God, Olivia, are you sure this isn't—" She stopped mid-sentence, because right then, the front door on the feed opened, and there he was, Mark, smiling, carrying groceries. But what froze both of us wasn't him. It was her, the woman who followed him inside, in a red dress that didn't belong in my kitchen. My breath caught, but I didn't move. On the screen, Mark placed the grocery bags on the counter, whistling. That same easy tune he used to hum while making breakfast for me. The woman giggled, brushing his arm as if she'd done it 100 times before. She was younger, confident, the kind of woman who thought she'd won something. I felt Rachel glance at me, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. Watching them together was like standing outside my own life, watching it burn in slow motion. Rachel finally whispered, "Liv, turn it off." But I didn't. I leaned in closer instead, my pulse a steady drum beneath my skin. "He wanted me gone," I said quietly. "He planned this." On the feed, he poured her wine, my favorite bottle, the one we'd been saving for our anniversary. They laughed, they kissed. And in that small, stolen moment, my world fractured into something sharp and deliberate. "That's my glass," I murmured. He didn't even bother hiding it. Rachel pressed a hand over her mouth, eyes wide. "What are you going to do?" she asked, her voice shaking. I stared at the screen a moment longer, then closed the laptop with a calmness that startled even me. "Nothing yet," I said, my voice steady as glass. "Let him think I'm gone. Let him get comfortable, because I'm not done watching." The rest of the day passed in fragments. Wine glasses clinking on the screen, stolen kisses, shadows moving through the house I once called mine. Every now and then, Rachel tried to distract me, offering food, conversation, comfort. But I barely heard her. My eyes were locked on the evidence unfolding before me, each laugh and touch stitching itself into a wound I refused to let fester. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to remember every detail, every betrayal. By evening, I wasn't just watching a husband cheat. I was studying a man who'd underestimated me. His patterns, his words, the little lies he thought I'd never catch. Every move felt like another puzzle piece falling into place. Rachel sat beside me, whispering, "He doesn't deserve your tears." I gave a small, detached smile. "Oh, I'm not crying," I said softly. "I'm planning." When the screen finally went dark, I shut the laptop and exhaled. The hurt was still there, yes, deep and raw, but something colder had started to form over it. A kind of strength I hadn't felt in years. "He thinks this is his weekend," I told Rachel, my voice low but certain. "But by the time it's over, he'll wish I'd never left." Sleep didn't come that night. My mind replayed every scene, every word, every careless touch he'd shared with her inside my home. By morning, exhaustion had given way to clarity, the kind of clarity that only comes when pain hardens into purpose. I brewed coffee in Rachel's kitchen, the bitter scent filling the room, grounding me. If Mark wanted to turn my weekend into his fantasy, I'd make sure it ended as his nightmare, not with rage, but precision. I wouldn't scream. I'd orchestrate. I opened my laptop again, downloading the footage, backing it up in 3 different places: email, cloud, and a USB drive I'd keep close. Watching him felt different now, detached, almost clinical. He wasn't my husband anymore. He was a case study in arrogance. Rachel watched me in silence, unsure whether to be scared or impressed. "You're really doing this," she said quietly. "You're not just going to confront him?" I shook my head. "No, he needs to feel it. The kind of truth you can't talk your way out of." By noon, I had a plan. It wasn't about destroying him, not yet. It was about showing him that every lie has a witness. I dialed his number, steadying my breath as the call rang through. When he answered, I softened my tone, slipping into the calm, gentle version of myself he expected. "Hi, honey," I said sweetly. "How's the house? You're keeping it clean, right? My voice didn't tremble once. Yeah, Mark replied quickly, his voice too casual, too bright. Just watching a movie. Nothing special. I smiled to myself, picturing him pacing, eyes darting toward the woman hiding just out of frame. Sounds peaceful, I said softly. I'll be back Sunday night. Miss me? There was a pause. Barely 2 seconds, but long enough to expose the truth. Of course, baby, he finally said. I could almost hear his smile crack. Good, I whispered. I'd hate to think you were bored. When the call ended, I sat there for a while, staring at my reflection in the black screen of my phone. My hands weren't shaking anymore. The fear, the heartbreak, all of it had settled into something sharper, colder. I wasn't the naive woman who'd left that house just 2 days ago. I was someone new, someone watching from the outside with eyes wide open. Rachel broke the silence with a cautious smile. You sound calm, she said. Too calm. I nodded. That's the point. That night, I started laying the final groundwork. One phone call, one detail, one perfectly timed surprise. I called the cleaning service. Cheerful voice, polite tone, just another wife scheduling a weekend cleanup. Yes, I'd like a deep cleaning scheduled for tomorrow morning at 9, I said. And please, send the whole team. The woman on the other end hesitated. Will someone be home? I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. Oh yes, I said. My husband will be very surprised. After hanging up, I sat in silence, letting the hum of the city fill the gaps between my thoughts. Everything was in motion now, quiet, invisible, inevitable. Rachel watched me from across the table, worry etched across her face. Liv, she said softly, you're sure you want to do this? I looked up, meeting her eyes. I'm not sure of anything, I admitted, except that he doesn't get to walk away smiling. The calm in my voice scared even me. It wasn't fury anymore. It was focus. I spent the rest of the night drafting one last message to him. Simple, loving, believable. I typed, Sleep well, love. Can't wait to see you tomorrow night. My fingers hovered over the send button for a moment, then pressed it. He'd read it in bed beside her, no doubt, thinking he'd fooled me completely. That thought no longer made me ache. It made me strong. There's power in pretending. And he'd taught me that better than anyone. When I finally lay down on Rachel's couch, exhaustion pulled at me, but my mind refused to rest. Tomorrow would be the last day I ever saw my husband the same way. Tomorrow the masks would fall, his, hers, and mine. I wasn't the woman who'd left home for peace anymore. I was the storm returning to reclaim it. Sunday morning, the sky was heavy with clouds, the kind that promised change. I drove home with the windows down, the cool air biting at my skin, keeping me alert. Every mile closer tightened the knot in my stomach, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was control. The house stood just as I'd left it, neat and quiet, a liar wearing my life's skin. I parked down the street, grabbed my suitcase, and walked toward it like someone approaching a stage she'd built herself. At exactly 9 o'clock, a van pulled into the driveway. The cleaning crew. Perfect timing. I stood just out of sight as they rang the bell. From inside, I heard movement, hurried steps, the sound of panic trying to compose itself. Then the door opened. Mark's voice cracked through the air. Oh, hi, you're early. A woman's voice followed, faint, nervous, the same one from the camera. I stepped forward, suitcase in hand. Actually, I said, they're right on time. He turned, eyes wide, face draining of color. Oh, Olivia, you're home early. His shirt was half-buttoned, hair tousled, the smell of cheap perfume lingering in the air between us. I smiled, not kindly, but precisely. Surprise, I said softly. I just couldn't stay away from my loving husband. The cleaning crew froze in the doorway, unsure whether to enter or run. You might want to step aside, I told them. This house needs more than a deep cleaning. Mark's mouth opened, closed, then opened again, a fish gasping for air. I can explain, he stammered, words tripping over each other. It's not what it looks like. I tilted my head, almost amused. Oh, Mark, I said gently, you should have rehearsed something better, because I've already seen exactly what it looks like. I dropped my suitcase and reached into my bag, pulling out my laptop. With one click, the room filled with the unmistakable sounds of laughter. Their laughter, echoing from the speakers. On the screen, there they were, him and the woman in red, tangled together in the kitchen. The cleaning crew froze mid-step, eyes darting between the video and the man standing in front of them. Mark's face went white, the blood draining fast. Turn that off, he hissed. We can talk about this privately. I took a small step closer, lowering my voice. You wanted privacy when you lied. You get honesty in public. His jaw clenched, but I could see the panic rising. A man cornered by his own reflection. The other woman shifted awkwardly behind him, her eyes darting toward the door. I glanced at her briefly, my expression unreadable. You should probably go, I said calmly, before I decide to add you to the highlight reel. She blinked, humiliated, clutching her purse to her chest. I turned back to Mark. You brought her into my home, poured her my wine, used my glasses. I figured she might as well help pay the mortgage too, since I just changed the locks and emptied our joint account. For a moment, no one breathed. Even the air in the room felt frozen, thick with shame and the faint scent of perfume and deceit. Mark's lips parted, desperate to form words that might undo the damage, but I could see it in his eyes, the realization that this was permanent. Olivia, please, he said finally, voice cracking. We can fix this. I gave a soft, humorless laugh. You don't fix a house that's already burned down. You rebuild somewhere else. He stepped forward, reaching for me, but I held up a hand. Don't, I said quietly. You've touched enough that doesn't belong to you. Behind him, the cleaner coughed awkwardly, waiting for direction. I turned toward them and smiled faintly. Start in the kitchen, I said. That's where the filth seems to collect. Mark flinched at that, a small, involuntary motion that told me the point had landed exactly where it should. I picked up my suitcase, walked past him, and opened the door. Outside, the air felt different, crisp, alive, free. Behind me, the chaos had already begun, muffled voices, the sound of the laptop replaying its damning truth, and Mark's broken plea dissolving into silence. I didn't look back. Some endings don't need witnesses. As I walked down the driveway, the sun broke through the clouds, warm and sharp on my skin. It felt like the first honest light I'd felt in years, and just like that, the weekend he thought was his became mine again. Months later, I finally made it to the coast, the trip he once suggested, but this time, on my own terms. The air was different here, cleaner somehow, as if every gust of wind was sweeping away what was left of him. I sat on the balcony of a small seaside inn, a glass of wine in hand, watching the waves roll in and retreat like the slow rhythm of healing. No cameras, no lies, just me and the sound of the ocean breathing against the shore. I'd sold the house, closed the chapter, and moved on with a quiet satisfaction that only truth can give. Sometimes people assume revenge means fire and fury, but for me, it looks like peace. It tasted like salt air and Chardonnay. My phone buzzed beside me, vibrating against the wooden table. His name appeared on the screen. Mark. For a second, I just stared at it, remembering the man I thought I knew. Then, curiosity, not longing, made me open the message. Please live, it read. I lost everything. Can we talk? My thumb hovered over the keyboard for a moment, and then I typed slowly, deliberately. I already did. You just didn't listen. I hit send, set the phone face down, and smiled to myself. The sky was turning gold, the sea catching fire in the light. As I took another sip, I realized the irony. He'd sent me away to find peace. And in the end, that's exactly what I found.